So I'm very happy to introduce the next speakers, next keynotes, because we met randomly at a conference last year. This was full serendipity. It was a conference that was not data related. But when they gave their talk, I thought, oh, this is a great fit for CSVconf. So let me introduce to you Clara Mendez-Cruz, who's the co-founder and CEO of Maldita, and David Fernandez, who's the CTO of Maldita. Maldita is an independent, non-profit journalistic platform which is focused on three areas: monitoring of political discourse, fact-checking to fight misinformation, and promoting media literacy and the use of tools, technology tools and data to enable communities to defend themselves against misinformation. I love your watchword, periodismo para que no te la quelen, so journalism not to be fooled. It's great. So welcome, Clara and David. The floor is yours.
A bit less journalism these days and a bit more technology, I would say, but we'll get into that. So this is just so that you get an idea of what we do and who we are. We started literally in my living room drinking beers. There's David, there's myself, and we are over 50 employees right now in a nonprofit that covers this information, not only in Spain, but actually in Spanish across the world. We do this with two pillars in mind. One is data collection and technology, and the other one is community engagement. And through those two pillars, we monitor this information across our language, and we give a systemic answer to it and to trying to build trust and protect information integrity. In order to understand what Maldita is, because we've talked about journalism and technology, but there are some other things within the foundation. We have three journalistic brands. You see Maldita there has been the main one, but also La Dudoteca and Factos, which is our youngsters project. We develop technology, and we actually have a big technological team that is led by David, which owns a for-profit company that develops tech to fight disinformation and scale our products. And then we have different teams, one on research and investigation about disinformation, one on education, one on public policy. We are big lobbyists, specifically in Brussels, but in other places as well, and a project team that pays for all of this, that looks for the money at least to pay for all of this. And I think it's also important to say that we work around the globe and not only in Spain and not necessarily only in Spanish, because we have been in the fact-checking industry for a very long time, and many of our learnings and also the tech that we've developed has been exported elsewhere around the world. So let me talk a bit about the problem that we're trying to solve, or at least to downsize a bit. I'm sure you've heard about this information throughout your life, but I think we are in a moment in which we've gone beyond disinformation being a solvable problem and actually something that is part of our lives and part of the world that is being defined as we speak. Trust is broken across societies, and this does not only happen in Spain or in Europe or in the US, we see it in every country across the world. There have been way too many changes in information consumption and the way in which people get their news, not from traditional media or mediated context, but actually into that very big ecosystem of platforms that we find in our cell phones that have changed fundamentally the way that people are able to make decisions on what is valuable information and what isn't. The square of a cell phone screen is way too small to give you any context, and hence people are no longer able to decide what is information or what isn't, and are being pulled into narratives that basically make them make decisions thinking that they're free in the making, but they're actually not, because they don't have the good data and the good facts. Disinformation affects absolutely everything. We tend to talk about the political consequences of disinformation, but disinformation also affects your health, your consumption, the school you take your kids to. It affects every single step of your lives. It has a polarizing impact, either on one side or the other of the political spectrum. We're becoming more divided societies, and that has a lot to do with disinformation that is putting us in places that disable our willingness to talk to each other. And that is a concern in the way that we've decided to live for the past years, which is a democracy in which we need to be able to have broader conversations if we want to continue living together in that kind of system. And I think it's also worth mentioning that it can even kill, and we've seen that happen in the global south for way too many years, and we're starting to see that in the northern hemisphere as well, especially in relation to health. If you've never come across the disinformation deep conversation before, I think there are some specifics that I need to comment on. When we started studying disinformation, I'm a former TV journalist. I've always thought that the media was the solution to any kind of problem that we would have about people not having enough information on their hands. That has been left behind. Because one of the things that I realized when I started looking at this information is that there is a line of conversation in which you have journalists, you have institutions, and you have what I would call news nerds, people that are very well informed because they consume the news on a daily basis because they have an interest in that. And then you have the average citizen that works 12 hours cleaning a school and then goes home, and the last thing he or she wants to do is actually read a newspaper from top to bottom. And the information diet that people consume gets set up between what they see on a WhatsApp channel, what they hear at the bar, a couple of news items that they might read throughout the day. Maybe they listen to the radio taking their kids to school, but that's it. Their diet is not as informative intense as anyone else's. So the way the average citizen makes up the idea of what is going on has to do with all those different consumptions that are not necessarily news every day. Which means that we need to start listening to that average citizen and what type of information and disinformation diet they're consuming in order to understand the problem. The second thing that anyone that wants to start thinking about this information needs to know is the fact that this information has been here forever, but there's one key moment in the last 10 years that changes everything, which is COVID and what happened after COVID. During COVID, we saw how our traditional conspiracy theorists, plus the disinformation industry that was powered by foreign interference, but also by other malicious actors, comes together and starts coordinating to pursue the same efforts. And that changes everything. We are not looking at three bad guys in their houses trying to fool a bunch of people. We're seeing a worldwide coordinated effort to push this information towards people. Let me give you one example of what this information is doing right now. These are the Valencia floods that happened in Spain a year ago. I don't know if you remember that there was this huge floods in Valencia that killed over 200 people and that destroyed many, many different towns. And they also brought together with them a huge avalanche of disinformation that at first looked like what usually happens in a climate crisis. But then when we started looking at it a bit closer, we realized it was a very well orchestrated disinformation movement. What we tend to see whenever there's a crisis is how ponme la anterior, por favor. Gracias. How where there's no information, the void needs to be filled because humans are very bad at uncertainty, right? So if we don't have enough good information to fill it, we'll fill it with disinformation. I'm sure many of you felt that during the COVID crisis. Well, we know that that happens traditionally whenever something like a crisis happens. So when a climate crisis happened, thank you, David, we saw three levels of disinformation: the social misinfo, the political liar, the conspiracy theory. That's what we would have expected. When I talk about social misinfo, I'm referring to these kinds of things. So this video is not from Valencia in 2024, it's Zaragoza in 2023. That kind of thing that you would share over your WhatsApp, right? The political lies is something that you would expect, I think, in any country, which is the politicians will start saying things that are not necessarily entirely true to say that it's the other's fault that there was not an anticipation of this happening. And then the conspiracy theories. We know conspiracy theories exist, and whenever one of these phenomena happens, they will say it's not climate change, it's actually HARP technology promoted by Morocco so that they can destroy Valencia's crops. This is one of the real ones, guys. Like we actually heard that one at this time. But this time was different. Why? Well, because suddenly we were seeing the same narrative being pushed by many, many different actors. We were seeing our traditional conspiracy theorists, COVID deniers, anti-vaxxers pushing this theory. We were seeing the far right pushing this theory, and we were seeing Russian-linked accounts pushing this theory. So over 20 disinformation contests saying that 2,000 people had died inside a parking lot in Bonaire. And of course, the government was trying to prevent us from knowing that 2,000 people were dead, right? What did the police say? We didn't find a single victim inside that parking garage, which is great news. You would have expected, but it wasn't so much for all those people that were pushing that narrative. Why? Because they were trying to construct a different imaginary of what had happened in Valencia. Let me guide you through this. What they were trying to tell you is you can't trust the government, you need to trust me. And they were pushing that narrative over and over again with different content, saying that 2,000 people were killed, that no one had told you that this was coming, even though they knew, for example. Pasa la siguiente. Their agencies are guilty. They hid what was coming, and they were criticizing the meteorological agency in Spain, saying they knew there was going to be this kind of flood, and they didn't alert the government or they didn't alert citizens, which is actually not true. They knew it was coming, and they gave plenty alerts saying, hey, this is going to be very dangerous, but the government did nothing. You can no longer trust any institution, and that entails also the king and the queen. One of the things that happened that had never happened before in Spain is that the king and queen went to visit the area where this happened, and they got thrown garbage at them, which is like the crown is quite an important institution in Spain. It's not so easy to destroy it. Why would they get so aggressive? Obviously, there was a lot of rage within the population, but we also saw this information that was trying to blame the crown for not enabling aid to go into the villages, which was, by the way, pushed by Russian accounts. NGOs either. Again, one of those institutions that have a lot of respect from general people. They were telling you, they're not helping you, they're helping the others. They're helping the immigrants. And this has been a narrative that we've been seeing in Spain for a very long time. And it got to its limit in Valencia. And we saw how the Red Cross lost 70% of their income because of this narrative and because of this being pushed during the Valencia crisis. And then it gets a bit more difficult. All this has been an attack. The conspiracy theories are also there when they've destroyed all the credibility from institutions, when you're already at a point in which you're believing that they're hiding information from you, that the institutions are not helping, that the government is not there, they tell you this has been an attack from Morocco with HARP technology to destroy crops. And we've left ourselves be attacked because there's a European law that has told us that we need to destroy all the dams around Valencia, and that's why the floods happen. None of this is true, but this is actually what people were consuming, and it's actually what people were believing. And this is a very well orchestrated disinformation narrative that we would have not caught if it weren't for data. Let me give you just 2 hints on disinformation narratives. We tend to talk, and fact checkers, and this is on us, tend to talk about hoaxes and isolated disinformation content items when what we should be talking about is narratives. Because those structured narratives is what is guiding the effort of the disinformation industry. Llévame a la siguiente. Some key aspects of a narrative. They tell a story. They are emotionally much more engaging than an isolated fact. And we should do the same with fact-checking in that sense. They contain a rational core, or they rely on a myth that everyone has believed over time. to build that disinformation content. They're promoted by trusted figures, and I think Trump is always a very good example for this. They're global, the same disinformation narrative that I'm telling you about in Spain. We will be able to find it elsewhere with specific local twitches, because that is where the disinformation ecosystem is driving us. They are transmedia. They can be on Twitter, but they can also be on WhatsApp or on general media. And they give meaning and organized experience for people. And that's why narratives are so persuasive. So the way we need to think about fighting disinformation and promoting information integrity is with that idea in mind. If this information organizes meaning and makes people feel that they belong to a group, we should try to do the same with information. David.
So as Clara was saying earlier, our job goes way beyond just publishing debunks in a website. Among other things, we do monitor those narratives that come up, and we provide, for example, a chatbot service through WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger that allows users to send us content that may contain disinformation or that they suspect may be disinformation. And then our system automatically answers in real time with our debunk in case we do have a debunk about it, or later when we publish something about this. To do that, we do need a very strong database of this information we can match against. And this approach and this system is a win-win for both parties, because for users, it gives a very easy tool to check for potential disinformation. And for us, it provides a lot of insights and a lot of contents that we wouldn't get through any other means. So what happens when we receive a tip, or we receive a potential disinformation, or we see something on a social platform that may be disinformation? We register it into our database, and this is our basic unit of content. This is the claim. We fill quite a lot of different fields when adding a claim into our database. Some of them are public on our website. For example, there you can see the claim itself. You can see more additional information, in this case, an Instagram reel. You can see 4 videos talking about the same disinformation, the channels in which the disinformation has been published on, and some categories and topics. Not everything that we have there is public. Clara will explain a little bit about this afterwards. We only show a tiny fraction of the available media elements we gather, out of hundreds sometimes. We also have detailed data of every time that a content reaches us, like both the date and time when it reached us, through what channel it reached us. We do know, for example, if it's on WhatsApp, we know if it's a frequently forward message. If we receive a frequently forward message, chances are that this specific thing is already viral on the platform, even though we may receive it just one time. And after the initial data collection, we update the elements that we already have when necessary. We add new URLs if we spot the same disinformation on another place. We add new media elements. One of the things that happen with disinformation is that it's dynamic, which today may be just a text message. Tomorrow we can mutate into a video or into an audio. So it's rather frequent that we have disinformations with images, with videos, with audios, with even PDF files, all telling the same thing. And here I would like to talk about the shift we are seeing in how platforms approach giving data to, in this case, fact checkers, but also to the academic institutions. In the last years, we have been seeing, for example, X or Twitter charging ridiculously high amounts of money for API access, or we have been seeing platforms imposing very harsh conditions to access the data. And this is something that it was not the same in the beginning, and this is a deliberate movement that platforms are taking, I would say, in accordance to the political landscape that we are seeing around the world. And that makes very difficult for us to integrate virality metrics, for example, in these social platforms into our systems. Just to give you a quick idea, this year so far we have registered almost 6,000 new claims, and we got over 22,000 recurrences, which is our recurrences is when we receive something that we already have registered into our database. With more than 600 claims each month, it's really complicated to keep track of all of them. And that's very important because all claims we register are different, but some of them share the same idea, which is the narrative that Clara was talking about before. So this is one of the fields in which we're working in the terms of implementing AI, the detection of narratives. And I have a practical case regarding that floods in Valencia last year. So, for example, here we can see five different contents, five different contents that if you look at them, they all say different things, but they all share the same idea. So whether it's people who died not being included in the official reports, military personnel and police cremating bodies, refrigerated trucks being put in place to move bodies at night, they all share the same idea. And the idea is that the authorities are hiding the real number of deaths caused by the floods. So our narrative system extraction ingests all of these contents that we register, dozens each day, and it starts creating narratives clustering those elements. So for example, here you can see that narrative. That narrative has over 30 different contents trying to support that idea. And we can follow the whole life cycle of the narrative. So from the first content that we spotted saying that to the last one, and we can see how it was born and when it died, when it stopped being shared. We also work on trying to extract the entities and people, institutions that may be affected by that narrative. So once we got this narrative, thanks to the AI and LLMs that we are using, we run the data through Wikidata to try to extract those entities. And then these allow us to cluster this information by those affected by it. Of course, we don't blindly trust all of the results that the AI gives us. So every narrative that gets created is put into this log of pending narratives where people from our team manually accept it or reject it in case it's not something that was a good result. And though AI has proven to be very useful for this task, we are also trying to implement AI in other fields. Mainly our focus on the last months has been on working on scale. One of our recent projects is to try to analyze thousands of video to try to extract potential disinformation from there. That's something that we couldn't do by hand, but we can do that using AI. So we can scale to thousands of videos each day, but that comes also with challenges. So I have this example here. I hadn't embedded the video, but it's available on that QR code. When everything in the video is implicit, so there's no audio, there's no text explaining the situation, LLMs really struggle to interpret what a human would do rather easily. So for example, we got this video in which a little girl is touching her belly and waves something producing this pink smoke. And that's been shared with a phrase that says, "This is Islam." So when you see the video, any human would rather interpret that she might be pregnant, and this is like a gender reveal thing, but LLM doesn't know anything about it. So we are working on that, on trying to tweak AI so we can get these implicit claims that we are not able to extract right now. And we are also working on trying to reduce hallucinations by, for example, feeding AI with context around world news. At the same time, we're trying to extract the narratives. So the AI has some context around what's going on and then produces better results. And of course, we are doing tons of things about these data that Clara will go through.
Yeah, we do a bunch of things out of the data that we extract using AI. One is pre-banking, and that project that David was talking to you about on trying to extract the videos is so that we can actually prevent what is going to be the narrative through the analysis of those videos that is going to start impacting society, so that we can throw pre-banking methodology to it. We do this not alone and not only Maldita. We're building that tool together with Full Fact, which are the UK-based fact checkers, but we're doing and building that tool for all the European fact checkers, because one of the things that we obviously see is that whenever a narrative starts kicking in Italy, we will likely see it afterwards in Spain, and then perhaps in Greece, and then it goes up, and the other way around as well. So we need to work more collaboratively and not on our own, since obviously this information in Spanish, we've learned that over the years, right? So especially, I think what it became very obvious with COVID, which is whatever we saw kicking in the US in Spanish, we would see it in Spain and in Latin America and the other way around. But the same happens with the European narratives more linked to our political moment. We build narrative alerts for private companies, for example, but also obviously for nonprofits and fact checkers. We are able to detect FIMI campaigns, and we are actually able to detect foreign interference campaigns that are not detected by our own government. I can give you an example of that. Before the summer, because of the AI analysis narrative system, we saw that China was throwing their first foreign interference campaign in Spain in a very long time. And I talked to some government officials, and they were like, oh, we hadn't seen that, which is interesting on its own. We do a lot of cross-border detection, that idea of understanding that if something is circulating in Spain, it's likely circulating somewhere else, either in the same language or in a different language. We do a lot of investigative journalism with this tool. It enables us to track those narratives and actually to locate the actors that are pushing those narratives. We work with researchers in understanding disinformation and building tools, but also just doing more academic papers on how those disinformation efforts are being advanced and are shifting over time. And we do a lot of policy reports, and that entails from position papers from our policy team to actually showcase illegal content for ESA enforcement for the EU. But things have changed a lot in the world in general since January, but specifically in the fact-checking world, they have changed a lot. I don't know if you're aware, but fact checkers in the past decade have been working with platforms to try to reduce harmful disinformative content on them. I love that you're taking a picture of that photo. You haven't seen the video? Oh, okay. That's even worse. So for over a decade, we've been working, for example, with Meta in detecting disinformation on their platform and attaching an explanatory article to that disinformation so that they could alert users that this information was being shared and that they were consuming this information. And I'm explaining all this because there's a lot of people that think that we told Meta what to erase, but that is not a fact. We gave Meta the information on what isn't true on the platform and an explanation on it. And what Meta has said over time that they did is that they alerted users that that was disinformation, not erase that content. We've worked with Google as well for a very long time, providing them with structured data called claim review, so that they, whenever someone searched something, if there was a fact check that was relevant to that search, they would show it first before content. Because of the political climate and dinners like this one happening, that is not longer happening in the US at least, and in Europe, my guess would be that it will not longer happen as of next year. And this has one very important consequence for citizens, which is that the internet is becoming more dangerous on purpose. David was telling you about how we no longer have access through API to the different platforms to monitor this info. That is one of the many movements that have been happening to make the internet more dangerous. And that means that we need to change our strategy. if we want to continue to be effective and to scale our work and our impact. So what we've decided within Maldita is to open up and share more data, and that is what we call right now La Buloteca. For the first time in the past 8 years, I would say, we are actually publishing every disinfo report that we get from our users and making available on our website, so that on the one side there is social awareness. People can actually know what kind of disinformation is out there and try to get an idea of how dangerous the world has become. Secondly, for newsroom efficiency, honestly, there's more disinformation than ever because there are no ways of stopping it on social media. Hence, we need to be more efficient, and we can no longer write very long articles that no one reads. Don't let my newsroom hear this. But if there's actually this information that we can solve writing a paragraph with all the right links to the important information and obviously fulfilling the fact-checking methodology, we want to do that rather than write long articles. We also want to power crowdsourcing. This has been at the core of Maldita from the very beginning. We work with our community. It is our community who reports this information to us. It is also our community who has the expertise that we lack as journalists to solve many of the fact checks that we need to approach. We have a thing that is called the Superpowers Program. There's over 3,000 people that have joined over time that help us with our reporting on a daily basis, but we want to go further. So we've opened a collaborative thread in which whomever thinks has a solution for a fact check, they can write it down. Obviously, the fact checker has the final decision on the rating, but this helps us advance some of our investigations quicker than otherwise. This also means more open data for OSINT and academia. And I think that is important in this new world that we're at. And I won't deny there's a hint to a business model, because we do know that there's a bunch of companies, governments, and organizations out there that would benefit from accessing more data. So we're telling them, this is what we're showing you. We have 127 more elements that have been organized and tracked, like the ones that David showed you with the narratives that you're not seeing right now. And last but not least, and very important, and one of the objectives that we had in doing this, because of that internet getting more dangerous, is that we hijacked search results.
So we knew that finding a way to publish what the users are looking for in natural language and using the word that people uses to search for these things would be valuable to rank higher on the search results. And yes, it did. So as you can see here, since La Biblioteca got online, we've noticed an increase in the visitors, and our results are being ranked and featured on the top side of the search results page. This has carried something that we didn't thought before, which is that we cannot use this traffic to measure virality in a new way. Before this, we were rather constrained in the bubble of the social platforms, relying on the retweets, the views they reported, and also on the number of reports that our community shared with us. But now we know what is viral outside of those bubbles, measuring traffic. So for example, over the past weeks, we have been seeing contents getting very viral and very visited that we wouldn't thought of debunking in a very urgent manner because we didn't see that virality on social platforms, but they did receive thousands of visitors. So we are reducing the selection bias on the things that we're working on that way. Another good thing of this model is that institutions, companies, and organizations start to see that disinformation into the press clippings that they receive. So they come to us providing the data that we need to debunk those disinformations that affect them. The other good thing is the participation we have been seeing, even in alpha state and before the official launch, because we hadn't launched it in official
the
way.
first time we talk about it
Yes.
publicly on our website, but we haven't told anyone that it is there.
Yeah. So it's present, but no one knows about it. We already see users contributing with different point of views over a lot of different claims, which is great. And thanks to that contribution from the users and the new model of short answers that we are using, we have been seeing an increase in our production. We address more contents. You can see how many, how the numbers have gone up over the past 2 months, even though in these past 2 months, half of the team have been away on vacation. So we expect even better numbers starting now in September. So with less time in quick investigations, we can give more time to more in-depth research and investigation about other important topics. But this came with a downside. Not everything is great. And I think that the main problem that we see is that the AI gets everything wrong. And this is not really our fault. And I have a specific case. So amid this wildfires wave that Spain went through last month, this information starts circulating. It says that all of the planes that Spain has to fight these wildfires were bought under Franco's dictatorship. So they were talking about 30 planes bought in 1971, of which 14 are in operation today. That would be planes over 50 years old, which is odd. And if you ask Google and the new product AI overview, you would see the disinformation repeated as a fact by Google on the top side of the results. So basically, Google is spreading disinformation. So that happened.
No news on that, though.
No news on that. So that happened over the first day. I was like every day trying to see if the answer was a different one, but it wasn't. So we ended up publishing a rather long article, which took quite a time to investigate, debunking that. So all the 14 planes that Spain has have been bought under the democracy period. A couple of hours later, I asked Google again, and this time Google repeated the disinformation, but it attributed it to us, which is, yeah, that was my face too. So Google basically linked our debunk, but repeated the disinformation attributed to us, which is really dangerous. The day after, I looked for it again, and in this time, Google gave the right answer. It linked to us. Everything looked nice. 2 days later, it repeated the disinformation again. So since these kind of responses and AI generation are not deterministic, you will never know if you're getting the right answer with the updated data or you're not. So in 2 days after, Google linked not just our article, but also another fact-checking organization's article, but it repeated the disinformation. And this is something that it's not just happening to us. One of the things that we have been seeing is that Google tends to give different results if you change the language. So for example, if you ask in English if the lemon could be a good treatment for cancer, in English they would say, no, it's not. But if you switch to Spanish, it may say that it's a good option. And that's something that's really, really, really complicated and really dangerous because it's not just political disinformation, it also disinformation affecting health. So I think that Google should rethink how it's handling this kind of AI responses.
Yeah, I think that of platforms being more concerned about results in English than in other languages like Spanish or even smaller languages is something that we've seen over the years and clearly one of our focus for the policy work. So what does the future look like? Looks a bit like this. But I don't want to be a party pooper today. So I think for us, it means that data is a means of resistance in the coming world, specifically in disinformation. I know that some of the conferences that we're going to be hearing throughout these 2 days go in that direction, but I think we really need to understand that using data and collecting data in disinformation, I'm going to finish before that, in the disinformation ecosystem is going to be fundamental. And I think we're late in doing so. A bit like this community, the fact-checking community is one that is very tightened up. We know, everyone knows everybody. We've been there for ages. And we've done a lot of collaborative projects, but we've always failed to harmonize our data. And I think that is really important for what is coming, because this idea of holding big tech companies accountable and of being able to have an influence in how they shape our world is only going to be done with the data that we have been building over time. Is not something that we're going to be able to do by writing op-eds, to be bluntly clear. So data as a means of resistance, I think, is where we're headed and what we should be thinking about in the coming years, because the world is changing. Where people are having dinner. I mean, let's look for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fascinating. Do we have any immediate questions? Please.
You're using an LLM, but you're training it basically on evil content. So how do you stop it from becoming a raging homophobic fascist LLM, because you're training it basically to look at all this disinformation? Does that give a feedback loop, and does it get crazy and fascist?
So we are not using our own trained LLMs. We did some tests with Llama to see how it worked, but it ended up giving really bad results. So right now, we're working with Gemini when trying to extract the narratives from the videos at scale that for doing that pre-banking thing. And we're working with GPT from OpenAI. And what we are trying to do is to give all of the context about the world news that may affect to those narratives. So for example, if we're talking about the floods in Valencia, we're trying to give them pieces of information about what happened and all the political discussion that there is, so we can extract that. So we're not really using our own LLM to do that. We are also trying to get, and we prompted to remove opinions from the results. So we are only trying to extract what may be considered as facts. So we are trying to, we have some guardrails to avoid that kind of opinions coming from the LLM.
I also say that it is an internal tool. It might go crazy on us, but
we would be able to reject those narratives in case we need it.
So you get feedback from your user, like they report things to you. How do you prevent people who want to spread misinformation to report real information as disinformation to you?
It doesn't matter whether the information is real or not. What we ask from our community is that they report anything that makes them doubt. Instead of forwarding it to their friends or whatever, just forward it to us. So we never, the editors within the newsroom don't work under the assumption that everything that we receive is false. We actually work on the assumption that everything we receive is making someone doubt, and we'll take it from there. And if you go on La Biblioteca right now, there are things tagged as true because we found that they were true. But if someone had a question about them, then it's worth fact checking it, right?
And we also don't have the assumption that all of the narratives that the LLM models generate are false. Some of them are just true.
And many of them, and I think that's interesting for us also in thinking about business models, we are a nonprofit, but we do need to pay salaries at the end of the day, is that many of those narratives that we're seeing are sentiment narratives.
So a lot of these misinformation is driven by nation states, as you reported. So is there a reliable way to find out if this is a bot being driven out of Russia, China, or is it just, rule of thumb, or?
Not exactly. The way that we go about it, because this is it's been something that we've thought about when trying to think about methodologies as well, is can you actually prove that someone that is spreading a specific topic of disinformation has spread disinformation, pro-Russian disinformation before, or has links, proven links, economic links, or gathering links, or like things like that linked to the Russian government. And if not, I know there's a lot of people that love saying that something is promoted by Russia, but often they don't have enough proof to say so.
A follow-up question. In the States lately, I've been noticing, I listen to the podcast, there's this startup called Ground News, and their offer is a subscription where you get basically perspective from everybody, and it's for you to decide. Is that something that you follow? It's a startup. I'm not that familiar, but I've been noticing them.
I mean, I don't know the startup itself. One of the things that we do say in every media literacy course that we teach is that you need to conform a balanced information diet. And that often means that you need to read things that you're not necessarily in agreement with at a first instance, but that is what gives you a bit of balance itself. Like, I think it's a cool initiative. I actually think that there was a similar thing in Spain promoted by Eduardo Suarez, which is the head of the Reuters Institute communication brand right now. Because I think from a media literacy perspective, that's a very interesting approach to understanding the media landscape. Yeah.
I would say that we are seeing weird movements in that direction with Los Angeles Times trying to create AI content as opposed at the opinion of an author, not like trying to give all perspectives, but generating that perfect perspective using AI, which is a little bit weird. So I think that it depends on how those opinions are selected, right?
Okay, sorry, because I was given a microphone. Sorry. So at first, as I am Russian and aware a lot about the narrative that it's done and it's coming from Russia, I would say that AI literally has done wrong a lot of things. So are you aware that it's already used to fake completely a narrative?
That it's already used to what? To fake?
To fake completely the whole narrative.
Yeah, you mean the creation of content to change LLMs? Yeah, we know that. Well, one of the things that we've seen is how the Pravda network is creating a lot of AI content in smaller languages. So not necessarily Spanish or English, also Spanish or English, but for example, in Spain, we're seeing the co-official languages. So Catalonian, Basco, Gallego, so that it tricks LLMs in the longer run.
Yeah, and another very small point of the context. There is an initiative promoted by Denmark in European community that it's called chat control. So it's about when AI goes literally wrong. It's a lawsuit which Italy, for example, supports without any change that actually suggests total removal of encryption over all the messaging applications and news platforms to retrieve and preemptively detect the, let's say, inappropriate content. So what do you think? If there is a possibility to avoid this or using, let's say, the alter AI for doing against the improperly usage of AI by a government?
I don't know. I don't think I know enough about it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll look it up. Yeah. One of the things that I'm very worried about is how we're seeing that that people are no longer necessarily using search to retrieve information, but actually using generative AI chats, and how much misleading information is coming out there and how unaware of it people are. That is making me very nervous lately. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation and thanks for the work that you do. I come from Spain, so I'm well aware of all the crap that goes around. I was wondering if, as hopefully your work pays off and more disinformation is debunked, like, isn't there like a danger that your organization itself is targeted by the disinformation in the sense that to say, well, yes, these people are saying that it's false, but it's because they are paid by.
I mean, that has happened since day one.
And
It wouldn't be
how
news.
how do you counter that, or how do you respond to that?
So I think one of the characteristics that every fact-checking organization across the world has, especially if you're a nonprofit, is that we are extremely transparent on our funding, our governance, how we make decisions. And to me, the part in which we were the most weak, if you want to say it that way, is how we decided what to fact check and what not to fact check. And La Buloteca goes into that movement of actually, look, this is not me choosing. This is the full pool. I'm making decisions on virality and how harmful something can be. But if you think I should be fact checking something else, help me out. Give me hints so that I can get it done. Entonces, faltaba algo.
I was curious if you would compare what you do with what Snopes does. Just want to see what you think about them and what you do.
Yes, dale. Sí, well, I can go. I mean, I think Snopes is a pioneer in doing what we're doing, has been always there. We belong to the International Fact-Checking Network in the same way that Snope does. Snope has and has not like, sometimes they have been there, sometimes they haven't. But I think, yeah, we do a similar work. And I think one of the things that Snopes realized very early in time, in comparison to other American fact checkers, I would say, is that they needed to fact check things that were not necessarily what an academic would say in need of fact checking, because that is sort of what attracted audiences, because they were giving answers to people, whether it was on a gossip thing or actually on a political issue, which I think is the way to go. You need to construct and to build communities in order for this kind of system to work. And that means that you need to answer people's queries and not only what is of interest to you. You're getting your steps in.
Hello there. Thanks so much for the work you do. I was doing this information research back in New Zealand in 2019 after a terrible attack at a mosque in Christchurch. And since then, we routinely noticed two very hard problems to face in that regard with the disinformation project. One was what do you do when the disinformation is actually not pushed from what is perceived as a malicious external player, but it is state sanctioned. So we are in Italy, we are in Bologna, there is Ustica, and there's been many years ago a terroristic attack in a train station. The only people that were actually sustaining what is now considered the historical truth were radical left-wing movements, and the police and the government were sustaining something which is now recognized as a conspiracy theory, but it was state sanctioned. So how do you face that kind of issue? And the other issue that you clearly suggest is that you need data from a reliable source. And one thing that I was repeating from 2019 is that the media partners and the platforms are not earnest players. They are not interested in truth, and they are being biased since the beginning. back in 2019 was the suppression of Kurdish journalists, was the suppression of Palestinian voices in 2019. And we know now that Meta has supported Hasbara propaganda. Again, it is not perceived as a malicious player. And so the rules were bended for that propaganda to go. Meta denied at the beginning, and now it is clear that that happened. So on one end, there is the what you do when the disinformation is state sanctioned, and what you do when the disinformation is not active, but it is the silencing of alternative voices.
So let me start with the first one. I think one of the rules that every fact checker has is to try to look for, whenever possible, at least 2 sources to be able to debunk something. That's often not the case. I won't deny it, but we've come across situations in Spain in which the police would say something, and because we had our doubts and we had some other sources that were not necessarily official, but that we trusted enough, we pushed for more until we got an answer that was honest from them. Let's put it that way. So I think, and for that new world that we were talking about, this is going to be more and more important. We, even in democratic countries, we do need to be a bit cautious on only sustaining a fact check with an official source. And I think there's a difference between an official source when we talk about statistics, which to me should go good enough, and an official source when we talk about something that is being told by us by a communications officer, right? But I do think we need to be more cautious than we likely are in that instance, because we have seen how that has happened over time. ¿Tú quieres decir algo aquí, no?
I also think that it's also comes to how's your process to vet things and publish. And one of the things that we have at Maldita is that every piece of fact check that we publish has to go through revision and get at least 4 votes for publishing that. So that way we try to reduce bias and try to look at everything that we publish with different perspectives and different points of view. So it has to go through a process in which basically, the journalists in our team share with the editors a piece that we want to publish, and every one of us will try to destroy that piece and look for the holes in what we are saying. And, if we have doubts about our sources, if there's a process in which 4 people have to vote for that publication, chances are more, different points of view are going to look and get different parts of the story that may not be as sound as we need, right? So besides doubting about those official sources sometimes, and I think that also on data, I mean, we of course can trust official sources when we talk about data or statistics, and we also have to call out when there's no statistics about something that we would need to debunk, right?
When there's no public statistics.
When there's not public statistic or statistics that it's not going to be shared with the media or with the general population. So when there's a lack of responses from those official sources, because they would probably not wanting to share something that may put that specific situation in a bad light, we also have to, let people know that there's no response or reasonable response from these official sources.
One of the things that has happened to us over time, and I'll go to the second question in a minute, but I think this is interesting for this specific crowd. One of the things that has happened to us for some time is that we would get whistleblowers from within the institutions telling us, ask for the data in this way through the Transparency Act and not in this way, so that we can actually give it to you. And that has happened over time. More than one and more than twice. On the second question, if I got it correctly, I think, and I think I've proven this, that working for Facebook or having Facebook as a client does not, or Meta as a client does not mean that we agree with everything they do and the policies that they pursue. I think that the third-party fact-checking program over the years has been one way of fighting this information, not necessarily the most effective one in any case. One of the things that the third-party fact-checking program has never enabled fact-checkers to do is to fact-check politicians, which are, by all means, in every research piece that you look at, the ones that spread the most information. So it's a bit useless in that sense. Yeah. 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 We don't do that. That's what I would tell you. But yeah, they are very good at silencing. And one of the things that is very amazing about Meta is how they will tell you, so they will tell you in Brazil or in the US or even in Europe, we are unable of adding fact-checking layers to a politician saying that it's okay to drink bleach, thank you. Whereas if they're asked by the Russian government, they'll be okay to erase every account from the opposition. It depends on who's asking and what kind of political situation they have. Well, I mean, that's happening in the US right now, so.
Thank you. It's been a fascinating discussion. Let's all thank Brian. Thank you very much. Time for a break downstairs. Thank you.